Yes,
Yep.
good morning.
Yep.
Great. Welcome to Festival Place Bite Size. Really exciting. I have to wear this gamer headset this morning because I couldn't get my other earphones to work, so it's new technology. But hopefully you guys really enjoyed the social lounge. We're really interested in testing this towards our Festival of Place in November. So good morning, I'm Christine Murray. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of the Developer and Director of the Festival of Place. And Will?
Yeah, I'm a landscape architect and sort of honorary member of the developer team for the moment. Been working on this for about, 6 months, I guess? Most of lockdown.
I think it'd be quite interesting. I mean, we'll get to that in a minute, kind of why we started Radical Rethink, but to say welcome to Radical Rethink. This is part one of two parts where we're going to present to you some of the ideas that were submitted to us. We had over 100 ideas sent to us about ways that we could make places in a more positive way, whether that's policy or process, design, object, etc. And we're presenting these first three ideas as part of our Festival of Place Bite Size. And this event is in association with Vestre. If you don't know the developer, we're a website. We host live and online events such as this. We make a magazine and we host a podcast. And it's all about making inclusive and equitable places. So we're really into amplifying ideas about how to do that better. And at events like these, we aim to share ideas and help professionals learn and connect with each other. That's why we were quite excited to have our social lounge and to see whether we can start to kind of bring people together in the virtual world while we are unable to do live events. So it's been a year of digital pivoting. Some of you might have come to some of our digital rethink events over lockdown. We're going to continue to do online events all the way through to the Festival of Place, which is from the 2nd to the 13th of November. So make sure that's in your diary. And we've got a really special deal on tickets today. And I'm really excited about the festival. It's funny because, of course, we were pushed by the pandemic to pull together a blended event at first and then finally a fully digital event. But actually working with this platform, some of the other speakers who are going to do workshops, I'm so excited about what we're bringing you. And that's and this idea that you can dip in and out across those 2 weeks. You can listen to some of our great speakers, so do check out the agenda. And you can roll up your sleeves. We're going to be using that lounge for some of the workshops, so you're going to be moving in between a kind of interactive and a speaker. And we have the opportunity to bring people on and off stage as well to participate in some of our live roundtables. And we've got awesome people like Saskia Sasson and Gil Penalosa and Brent Todarian, the former chief planner for Vancouver, and Yolanda Barnes and Stefano Bueri, the architect from Italy. So I'm able to bring in a lot of global voices as well as local UK ones. So do check it out, and we have a great discount today. So till the end of the day, which I'm sure, yes, I think my colleague James has shared it in the chat, so you can see that. So about today's event, so I think it's important to say and talk about how Will worked with us on this idea. We worked with Vestre as well, who are really excited to be able to support like-minded thinkers, whatever their background and experience, and they really enjoyed engaging with these ideas. And the way this morning works is we're going to hear those three of the ideas, and then we've got an amazing sounding board who are going to give some of their feedback on the ideas with the view that we can kind of amplify them and take them forward, and to kind of publish them as well to make them available to you in other formats. So Will, I think this is where I turn to you and I say, we've been working on this, like you said. Where did Radical Rethink come from, and why do you think it's needed?
Why not? I think it's always good to have a bit of a shake-up, and I think this idea came about pre-lockdown, and I guess it, for me, comes from a kind of mixture of frustration and passion that we've got a lot of challenges ahead, and that was even before we started considering the pandemic that we're all having to deal with right now. And I think that's helped us reevaluate our relationship with exterior space, whether that's public, private, privately owned, public. The outside world has really helped and come to the fore, and I think it's actually assisted with all of our sanities, if to start with, but health is become more critical, and public space, the spaces in between buildings, have become far more relevant than they were, and they're assisting with economic rebuild. If you go into Soho or other high streets, they're accommodating a lot more. Cars have been, well, until recently, reduced, and we're all walking and understanding our neighborhoods a bit more. And then the wider, we've got huge climatic challenges ahead. The pandemic's just one little blip in the bigger picture, I think. And so it's about breaking down silos. I think, you know, the industry is full of them, and with those egos. And I think we need to collaborate much more closely and think much more radically, have some fresh perspective to try and address them in a meaningful way.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to introduce our first ideas, and I'm going to, Will's going to join us a little bit later. So wave goodbye, Will. And then I'm going to bring up our first two, and I'm going to vanish for a little bit, and then I'll come back. So bear with me as I marvel, or I don't know, learn on the spot. I'm pivoting in front of you. Hi, Tina.
Hello. Good morning. How are you?
And just going to get Lucy as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. And you guys have a presentation to share. So I'm going.
We can't hear you, Christine, but we're good.
Good. Okay. I was just saying, I'm going to disappear from view. I'm going to let you guys take the stage, and then I'll be back to bring on your sounding board. So good luck.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well, and thanks for joining us today. We are delighted to be selected to present our ideas from our response to Radical Rethink. Our response is based on a proposal to change planning policy and rethink the red line.
I'm going to share.
Yeah. Traditionally, we think of a development having a building and a red.
Do you want to your screen, Lucy?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. You see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'll start again. Good morning. We're delighted to be selected to present our ideas and our response to Radical Rethink. Our response is based on a proposal to change planning policy and rethink the red line. Traditionally, we think of a development having a building and a red line boundary with a route from outside the site to the front door. But what if we made the red line boundary permeable? And that wasn't the limit of our thinking, but an opportunity to link and connect with the wider neighbourhood. By sharing our external space and seeing it as an asset and making our boundaries permeable. For us, it's all about context, looking over the fence and understanding what our neighbours are, who our neighbours are, and what working with them, building on their and our best bits and helping out where they need a leg up. Our proposal is that new development must show a relationship with their context by providing improvements for local people and wildlife, specifically considering those within a 25 to 50% expansion of the boundary, creating a zone of influence. This percentage may vary depending on the scale of the site. A larger site could look at a larger zone of influence by an expansion of 50% beyond the site boundary, creating connected habitat corridors, integrated flood systems, addressing a lack of social or play space in the area, improving connections to the wider community spaces, expanding cycle routes. The list is endless. Or on a smaller scale, providing a much needed facility, for example, a shared outdoor meeting room, or promoting the ecological habitats in the area by providing the right foraging and roosting spaces for local specific species such as bat boxes and dark corridors for bats, or creating a local network of nectar-rich planting for local beehives. Traditional approaches to the red line boundary can result in siloed landscapes with leftover space between the developments. But by making the red line boundary permeable and expanding to a wider zone of influence, greater connections can be made physically, socially, and ecologically, enhancing the character of the space and the area. We are looking at a joined-up approach. What good can the development draw in from beyond, and what good can the development bring to the context? There's a lot of good out there. Connecting the dots is a lot easier than drawing a whole new picture. So when the planning policy is in the process of change at the moment, why don't we think radically about our red line boundaries? Whilst working with our neighbours and engaging the community at an early stage, we can establish what is special about the neighbourhood and enhancing and building on these qualities, a symbiotic approach. The next few slides are a case study based on a project in Edinburgh where we're working on at the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. It is a mixed-use expansion to the Bioquarter site, creating Scotland's first health innovation district. This is an aerial photograph of the site with the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary here and Arthur's Seat and Edinburgh City Centre over here. Our initial approach was to open up the site boundary and think beyond it in a wider scale. We explored ecological connections, examining surrounding green spaces and how they could connect with the site, creating habitat corridors and a strong green infrastructure. We identified all the local attractions, facilities and schools within the wider area, identifying what was lacking and what facilities would benefit and complement those already existing. And we looked at the local and citywide movement patterns, examining bus and tram, cycle and pedestrian routes, and how we could connect the site, ensuring the site was permeable and enhanced the area. This approach to the site looks at how it can be integrated within the area and at a local and at city scale. The following slides highlight what proposals might look like. At the Bioquarter site, we've proposed a transportation hub, facilitating healthy transport connections and promoting active travel in the area, providing cycle lanes and cycle parking. During the last few months and the impact of the pandemic, we have spent much of our time outside. What if developers were to incorporate an outdoor meeting room as part of their outdoor space? This could be shared or become a community facility for outdoor learning or a community hub, working with our neighbours. Proposing a range of outdoor community spaces enriches the local environment and provides spaces for communities to play, work and enjoy, and essential during these pandemic months and for our long-term health and well-being. So let's think radically, change our planning policy, rethink our red line boundary, promote the idea of a zone of influence, creating a connected environment, community and spaces for all. Thank you.
Hi, that's great. Okay, I'm now going to invite your sounding board onto the stage to give you their feedback. So here comes Tara Gbolade, the architect. Jonny Anstead, developer from town.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
So just wait for Jonny to join. And we're waiting a response. I'm going to switch. But maybe you could start, Tara. You could start as I invite people to things. But you have some thoughts to share about what they're proposing and the need for it.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really good. And it was great to hear your idea sort of succinctly across. So thank you very much for that. This one is actually dear to me because I completely agree in the concept of linking beyond the red boundary, because we so much work in our little silos, whether that's site or development. So I think it's such a brilliant idea, first of all, to extend it. I felt you did a really great job in terms of expressing the idea. So what I'll suggest that you think to push it further, perhaps, just because I feel you covered the first section so well. One was it'd be great in terms of either whether this is something done or whether the local authorities are able to adopt this social mapping that you in effect did as part of the project you showed us towards the end. So this digital library, in effect, that accommodates all these social spaces that exist. So therefore, when a design team, urban planners come to look at a scheme, that already exists and they can draw from that knowledge, which is always being added to by local communities, local people. There's so many amenity spaces, including mine here, that's just not used. So I think actually developments offering that up to accommodate things like outdoor meeting spaces or children's play is brilliant. And another thing I thought could be interesting was whether there's an opportunity for public engagement here. So actually, when you do find a site or have a site with your red boundary, because you're already connected to these social activities and green spaces and these corridors that your biodiversity corridors that we're looking at, that actually perhaps this is an opportunity for the local people to get involved and say, actually, because we have children's play over here and we have outdoor meetings over here, this site will be ideal for X because we don't have it. So actually, there's a potential for this co-creation aspect of what the site does. I thought it was brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jonny. Sorry, I'm just going to ping through and get all the feedback, and then I'll let you guys come back in. So, Jonny, I want to bring you in as a developer, especially because I think this speaks a lot to what developers are doing within and without and on the edges of their.
Hello, thank you, Tina and Lucy, and yeah, thanks, Christine. Well, I was just blown away by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles slide. I just think there's way too little of that in the world at the moment. So that was my first thing that I just wanted to hats off to you for that. But yeah, I think it was great. Yeah, indeed. No, it was really good. As we know, there's developers work in silos. We get very obsessed by red lines. And the result is that one kind of site or one field or one small bit of land at a time gets developed in isolation of everything else. And in the absence of a sort of coordinating planning system that really works, we know that the results are really bad development. So I think what you were getting at was really really positive, and you sort of really brought it to life, the benefits of working across the red line. Am I okay to ask a question now, Christine, or is that yeah? My question really is going to be about of course your sort of your approach in a way is sort of site centric. So you're saying, look, here you're bringing forward a site, and therefore everything else is a neighbouring site. But of course, any site is also a neighbouring site to somebody else's site. So so my question really is all about how you kind of get equitable collaboration, bearing in mind that nobody has ultimate control of all the sites. How do you encourage or make people work together when they might not want to? And how do you sort of do that positive collaboration and that overspill onto adjacent land areas when they actually might have quite conflicting and competing interests with yours, and they might want to do something totally different and actually might want to they might want your site to be a wildlife corridor. So from a developer's point of view, that was kind of what I thought would be quite interesting to explore a little further.
So Tina, I just want you, and Lucy, I just want you to hold your questions in your mind, because I'm going to go to Sue Morgan now from the Design Council, and then I would like you to respond to everybody all together. So
Hi there. Hi, thanks, Christine, and hi, Tina and Lucy and fellow panel. So I guess I'm speaking from the perspective of Design Council, but also I can take multiple different hats off in response to your proposition as a landscape architect, as somebody who's worked in local authorities, as somebody who's worked with the private sector and charitable community engagement sector. So I could try and cover all bases on this. One observation is I hope you're all responding to the planning white paper, because in terms of the red line and the abolition of the duty to cooperate, I think your proposition hits some of those buttons. So I hope that you're going to be putting something in. I think overall, I'm really quite passionate about the notion of red lines and how we work within them. And I give you an example of when I worked as CEO of the Wandle Valley Regional Park Trust. When you're working over 4 boroughs, duty to cooperate and actually getting sites and administrations to cooperate about doing something very simple on a river corridor is extremely difficult. So any opportunity to beef up how we work outside red lines and how we strengthen the design and the overall look and feel of the development is amazing. The bit of the presentation that I was really excited about was your the shelters aspect. And I'll come back to why I was, but I think in terms of COVID lens, really understanding the sort of importance of outside spaces, particularly as we go into the winter, where we're all going to have to adopt more of a European stance to wrapping up in blankets to sort of be outside, and, you know, a sort of more kind of beer garden type approach. I think, you know, those initiatives are amazing, and there's lots of, meanwhile, unused space that we could be using for those. The question is, from my mind, and one pushback, I guess, planning, master planning, local authorities, local plans. So I can hear planners in my mind saying, what do you mean we don't have a thought about the spaces outside the red line? You know, there are good local authorities with good master plans and good development plans and good local plans that should be thinking about outside the red line. Whether it happens or not is another question, but it should be there, and the powers are there in the planning. Lend-lease, good example. Look at Elephant Castle. I think, you know, amazing, well thought through thinking around the red lines. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And the other question to me is the site that you showed as an example is quite kind of semi-rural. So where it gets tricky is land ownership in constraint urban sites, where you can have 4 different local authority departments owning small bits of land. So it's how you get over those aspects of collaboration with local authorities who tend to be most of the landowners. So I suppose my question is around the process aspects, really.
Great. So thanks very much. So Tina and Lucy, do you want to come back on some of those points and comments?
Okay. Well, will I start, Lucy, and you can chip in? There was quite a lot to respond to there, but we really, you know, we really appreciate the feedback. I think from our perspective, most of us, many of us, and many of the good local authorities do look beyond the red line boundaries, but I think what we're wanting to do is actually make it a fixed requirement, which is why we've kind of said, right, instead of the red line being a boundary, i.e. the edge of what you're thinking, if we widen it up and we actually put a figure on what the zone of influence might be, then it starts to give it a bit more statutory weight. I think the idea of consultation up front is absolutely key, and it's not just community consultation, but stakeholder consultation. Some of these sites are not within residential, so, you know, within wider urban areas, industrial areas, and so on, and actually getting conversations happening early is, I think, going to be key to the success here. Now, given that adjoining neighbours are already static consultees, so they're already involved in the planning process and being notified that there is a development proposed, why don't we try and utilise that better and get a conversation actually happening at that point, rather than, you know, here's a notice. It's actually, here's the start of a conversation happening, which I think could be really interesting. So from our perspective, I think it's about, we recognise that there are changes happening in national planning policy. Now's the chance to actually strengthen some of the aspects of planning that are, you know, that are already in place but are maybe not working as well as they could. And I think that in some ways it is easier when you're thinking about it in a master planning sense, and it's more difficult when you're thinking about different developments happening, you know, within maybe a kind of already developed zone, and the kind of competing needs thing. That's why I think you're going to have those conversations early doors. I also think it's really important that that this isn't seen to be another levy. It's another burden for a developer. So it's not like an extension to the community infrastructure levy or 106 or in Scotland section 75 obligations. This is actually about doing something that's of mutual benefit. So, you know, so it's that symbiotic thing that Lucy was describing in the presentation, rather than when actually you, developer, are going to have to pay for more in the area. It's actually about what's really good out there that we can draw on, and what can we link to, I suppose, is the way that we really see it. And if there's ever an opportunity to bring in a bit of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Well, Jonny, you know, so that would be my kind of initial response to the panel. But you know, maybe Lucy, you want to kind of chip in as well.
I agree. I mean, I think we already have the neighbour notification, but if we get the neighbours involved early doors, they can benefit from us, and we can benefit from them. It's all about joining up and thinking outside the boundary and making them permeable. And for the likes of things like infrastructure, flood systems, you know, it's very important. We don't just look at our small sites. We have to think outside that. Green infrastructure, move.
Great. Okay, I'm going to say thank you very much to our sounding panel, and I'm going to invite our new speaker. So there's going to be a little bit of moving around, but thanks so much, Tina and Lucy, for sharing it, and thank you very much to our sounding board for your comments. And we're on to the next speakers. So people are going to start disappearing. Give a wave. And brilliant. And now it's my pleasure to invite Jaffer to the stage. So hopefully that will, there we go. He should appear as if by magic. Hello.
Hi.
Are you all set?
Yes, I think so.
Brilliant. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and then I'll be back to introduce and invite your sounding board.
Sure. Let me share the screen. Okay, so hopefully that's come up. I should say this initial picture has nothing to do with the contents. Please let me know if it doesn't appear in the chat, by the way, because it doesn't. I can't tell whether it's actually appeared on the screen. Oh, perfect. Right, so this has nothing to do with the actual contents, the picture up there, but I'm a relatively pessimistic person, so I like to start with a nice picture. So the idea is for you to look at it, smile, and let's move on. So what are some of the drivers behind putting this together? With what it says on there, basically we need to build, we need to densify, we need to continue urbanization. Urbanization is going to continue. But it's a question of how we do it and what we do, how well can we do it. Things around, like, I don't think we necessarily need a new office tower block, a glass tower block, but perhaps we do need a new A&E department. Just what do you build, how do you build, you need to build it well. And some of the new old ideas, when I say that, I mean things like the 15-minute city, which isn't a new idea per se, but it is something that is made a comeback perhaps in the last 4 months, more and more these sort of things around being able to live where you work, which requires densification, is making a bit of a comeback, even though it's not necessarily a new idea. So of course, if we're building, then we need it to be good space. Cities need to be attractive. Right now, where I am here in South London, I don't really want to be here during quarantine. I don't want to be here now because I can't. There's nothing around here for me to really do or see, and all my friends are in central London, but I can't go there. So everywhere needs to be a good place to be. Which polycentric cities, I think, is another one of those new old ideas making a comeback. So key to that, to have this thing of happy and fun cities. I think that's the key to making livable cities, and key to that is public space. Is there a clash between building and having public space? Possibly, and that's something I'm trying to explore. So how do you get around that? One way, just one way, is here's a building on stilts. So you just raise the building up, and what you could do is have that ground floor space that disappears, go on the top there, which is what that dashed line is supposed to indicate. And the space underneath the building becomes space for people to enjoy. You can sit there, you can do what you want there. It just becomes space. And just for a laugh, I've put in a drawing that I did. So this is a drawing that my colleague Nikki did for me, and this is a drawing that I did alongside some reviews from my friends when I sent it to them. I also got one saying 0 out of 10, but I think that's a bit harsh. I don't think this is that bad, really. Are there precedents? Yes. So I'll flick through several. You can go back all the way to 1600s, and there's stuff from there. It's not exactly a new idea per se. Here's some more examples. This is a really good one because you've got about 268 apartments dotted around the building, and then some of them can also look into this new public space. So that's quite cool. The skate park, which initially brought this idea into my head, walking past the South Bank. Some more. I've chosen this rather poor image from Google Maps because it's got the table tennis table there. And the idea being we can use this space to do more than just have benches necessarily. Not exactly a ground floor, exposed ground floor per se, but similar idea, I think, at the Tate in the big turbine hall. Serpentine Gallery, and a couple more. The one on the right actually is a sports court. The little green patch down there underneath the stills is a sports hall for the center, the youth center, I think it is. So that's quite interesting. What's some of the benefits? Well, all the social benefits that you get of public space, of course. Some protection from the elements. I imagine if it's raining really heavily, people might not be out in the first place, but there is some protection, especially maybe from wind, let's say. Or really, really harsh sun, which we might get with ever hotter summers. You can sort of coincide public space and buildings, but like I said, this is just one solution. Possibly flood protection, you're lifting things out of the way, but also you could put in clever suds channels in there to try and mitigate some of the floods we're going to see as the US stick pie and the climate emergency really hits us, even more than it's hitting us now. The thing about organization space for communities and youth, I haven't really thought that through, but the idea being that with all these centres being closed down, thanks to cuts, perhaps this is a space where people can own and do as they want there. It can perhaps be a congregation space if there is no other space for that. And the right to the city, the idea of buildings and buildings, the space immediately around it and underneath it are usually private space, which is fair enough. They're generally owned by it's the building property. But the idea is, well, actually, this makes the city more permeable and it reinforces some of that right to the city concept. Some design issues, potentially, well, design solutions and issues. Obviously, you want to make it as nice as you can. So all the things in there, you want people to be able to do things in there. So it's not just blank concrete ground, but have benches, have a swing, I don't know, have a play area, have a trampoline. I'll come on to users in a second. So there's all sorts of things in there. Of course, safety and question of noise is a big one, because for the people above there, you want them to actually be happy to be there, whether it's a residential or whether it's a commercial building. Wind and accessibility and open access. Really, when I put this together, really in my mind, I'm thinking it needs to be a place where anyone can go in. So it's got to be inviting. It's got to be somewhere quite welcoming. Users, limits your imagination. You tell me. You can have a book club on a Monday, a yoga class on a Friday. Saturday could be just Children's Day, where some sort of soft toys and play stuff is brought in. I don't have a kid, so I don't know what I mean by play stuff, but I don't know, toys. Pokemon. No, I'm kidding. You know, there are things you can bring in, like a swing set, slide maybe. So it could be quite a useful space to do all sorts of stuff. Idea being it's permanently impermanent, and so it can be whatever you want it to be. You don't necessarily have to. Let's not over-engineer it, I think, is what I'm trying to say, or over-engineer parts of it that leave other parts a bit more blank. Let it be what people want it to be. Let it be what people think that they want to use it for. Let's not stop stuff from happening and over-engineer things. Development options. My understanding of development is slightly limited, but I'll give it a go. So one option is to just have the entire thing run by a developer, and the developer uses the funds from selling the flats or the rent above whatever it is, and funds the entire thing, including the ground floor, which should be cheaper to design considering there aren't any sort of internal partitions and whatnot. It does mean you lose slight rent, which could perhaps go on the top floor, or you could have half a building. So half the footprint is a retail shop, let's say, the other half is public space. Another option, drawing on from community land trust, is this idea of, I don't know how well this would work, but the idea of a community land trust where the community own that land and therefore the houses above become cheaper because you don't have to buy the land, and then any increase in that land value can be extracted as things are sold to fund other things in the area, like a children's playground, for instance, or a park. Perhaps there's something in here where the council retains the freehold and then just sells the airspace above with a nominal maintenance fee, perhaps with the ground floor. Conscious not to call it ground rent because ground rents have had a lot of bad press. In all fairness, they are not the nicest things and can get quite predatory. So you can replace the ground floor with an additional story, like I said, so that might give a bit of an incentive to the builder to do so. And I know the tagline for this, the sort of marketing material did say that an entire city could be raised, but I think perhaps you start with some locations. I'm not entirely sure you need to have it all over the city, now that I think about it. An entire city raised up, and it just sounds a bit dystopian almost to me, although you could put in bike lanes. Maybe there's something there. In certain zones, in certain areas, definitely more inner city than outer city. Other thoughts: this doesn't replace parks and open space. It can't, nothing can. You need that as well. But the idea here is this creates some more space, perhaps around a plaza, perhaps in somewhere like the City of London, I think could really do with it, or the corners of Oxford Circus, where there's no space to actually walk around. The pavements are really small, and I don't like Oxford Street, and this could make it a bit more bearable. That quote in there, I'm just leaving it in there. You can read it. Not much else to say. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it does. I really like it as a sentence to sort of say, let's put stuff together, put it in the city, and not try and again over-engineer it, and just see what organically comes up and what sort of identity develops as time progresses. Maintenance. How do you fund things? I guess that's the question for everything. How do you fund anything? And what is the future city? Like I said, I'm not convinced it's an entire city on stilts, but possibly large sections with bike lanes and whatnot running through it. That is it. I will stop at this lovely picture which my colleague drew. I'm really jealous of this drawing ability. I appreciate architects can do this, but to me it's just wow. Like, you can put this together in 30 minutes. That's amazing. Anyway, yep, that's me done. Christine.
Thanks so much for that. If you can unshare your screen, and then I'm going to start inviting in some of your feedback panel. But I liked your sketch too. It had real passion in it, even if you got a bit tan. So I'm just sending invitation. We've got Adam Thorpe, who's going to be feeding back to you. We've got Will Sandy coming back to the stage, and sorry. That's my sound when things go wrong. Everybody's got a sound, a Zoom sound or an AirMeet sound. Mine goes like this. Oh, you hear that a lot. We've got Tara coming back, and we've got Sue Morgan coming back. I'm going to kick off with Sue this time because she went last time, but I think it would be great to hear from you initially, Sue, about your feedback.
Hi, great. Thank you, Jaffer. That was amazing. Really good. I loved it. Loved the idea that you talked about flexibility, that you also sort of talked about reuse and repurpose, that you talked about community land trusts and empowerment. That's great. I also like that you thought about the finance through. So I think, there's kind of well-rounded response. Also that you mentioned all the grand challenges, that Design Council are working on, age, homes, skills, cities, economies, those things all sort of fit. Interesting observation from my perspective is that, there were plans in the 1930s for Regent Street to be a kind of whole kind of city street up on stilts to accommodate cars. So kind of like flip on what you were saying, but, there's these things have been thought through. I also think it's interesting because there are some really good examples that not necessarily on stilts, but I think accommodating these smaller spaces like Paley Park in New York, the Angel building where Design Council were for quite a while, the whole downstairs floor through Section 106 was open to the public. And I think that's also a model that's been used by a number of corporate buildings in America, usually funded through business improvement districts, where the whole of the ground floor ends up being open to sort of public access. Sometimes it's for a short period of time, but it's a great model, and something that we should probably think of here. I'm also minded of the Westway Trust over in North Kensington near Grenfell. I used to work there at an urban study centre many years ago, and the Westway Trust is a really fantastic example of how to reuse all that unused space underneath the motorway. Slight issues with air quality, given all the particles that come off. And I think also work that we do with Network Rail and looking at how Network Rail arches are used is also another example of kind of, the city on stilts, or the spaces in between and the spaces underneath. So I think that all sort of really chimes really well with me. I think, practically speaking, I think what's correlation between the two presentations, yours and the others, is the boring stuff. It's like, who owns the land? How can we do it? So I immediately go into kind of thinking in granular detail about how that would manifest itself. But I think the fact that there are a number of really good case study examples that align themselves with your idea, would help, add grist to the mill in terms of making that business case. But I think, yeah, great, thank you.
Brilliant. Adam, can I bring you in? Because we haven't heard from you yet in this session. It'd be good to hear.
Sure, thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation, Jaffer. I really like the overall idea that you're presenting there. I agree that we need more non-prescriptive covered public spaces, especially now. My concern is that if we're talking about public spaces, then the trend seems to be in the opposite direction. As many councils and public institutions are forced to seek revenues from their spaces, whilst privately owned spaces are the ones that seem to be able to offer public spaces, ironically, as they seek to gain from the activation and cross-pollination that serendipity of public space provides. So I think there are a number of great examples, as Sue points out. I think that we can learn from these examples as well, like the South Bank Undercroft and the Save the Undercroft campaigns I'm sure you're all aware of, which is a great example where even the South Bank found itself entertaining the possibility of commercialising existing elements of the Undercroft to generate revenues for expansion of its public offer. So then we end up in this sort of cultural conflicts about, are we talking about the culture inside the building or the culture outside the building? Should they be forced to compete? I don't think many of us would think they should. Around CSM, Central St Martin's, which is where I'm based, we've got a couple of examples. So we've got a place called The Crossing, which runs through the bottom of the granary building, which is public space within the college space between the two entrances. And also the Canopy Market, which sits to the right of the building as you in front of Waitrose there, to those that are familiar with it. These are open to the public, but they're privately owned and managed. And so they're not open to all of the public for all purposes. And in addition to that, one of the problems that faces public ownership of space, as you pointed out, and I thought it was really interesting, I appreciated the fact that you raised the problem around management and maintenance. And it seems to me in some instances that public sector is offloading public spaces to private management and ownership in many instances, not just because of revenues to deliver essential services, but also the cost of maintenance and management of some of these spaces. So I think it's really interesting to try to think through and work out the answer to the questions that you were raising about who would we imagine is going to manage these spaces and who's going to pay for the management of these spaces. We could point to people like the Camerado's public living rooms, a very modest in terms of scale example, but in these spaces are managed by the people that use them according to a kind of sort of mutually understood and evolved social contract. And how does that fit within or without these sort of private public spaces? Or are we going to find a way where they're not private public spaces, they're public spaces? Now, is it possible that at that stage in the planning process, we're able to in advance nominate assets of community value in the way that we can at the end of the process when someone's about to knock something down, we say, oh, don't knock that down, that's an asset of community value. Well, in the process of looking at stuff, could we say in that early stage, hang on a minute, we think that's an asset of community value or has potential to be. And so we demand the right, or not demand, but we have the right to be able to access that asset of community value and get the opportunity to see if we can fundraise for it. So I think you raised some really interesting points, and I hope we find a way to realise some of your vision, because I certainly think we need it. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Tara, can I ping to you to
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Jaffer. That was a really brilliant presentation, and I agree with a lot of the comments already made by my fellow panelists. I guess what I would want to build upon is actually how could we use these spaces with existing buildings. I think absolutely the idea of raising buildings on stilts, but could we go through a program, or could there be an exploration of a program of going around the city, going around areas to find existing buildings that could accommodate these types of spaces? And in that process, actually, it's quite an engaging one. So not necessarily a company being set up to do that, but actually it's students who do that, local students, local residents, local businesses who get to engage with that, because actually they are the ones who then create the agency to potentially force change through, or encourage gently change through. One of the points you picked, of course, is that these spaces could be formal, informal, open to user type, user base. And I wondered, actually, is there a danger that when it's so open, which always tends to happen, certainly with design, when there's such a broad spectrum of user, it's quite difficult to design. So actually, whether there could be this digital program thinking about who appropriates the space. Is it students one day, or is it local businesses the other day, or is it markets the other day? So actually, even though it can be appropriated by different types of people, thinking of the quality of these spaces, because of course some of them you could potentially knock out. If we're looking at existing buildings, for example, you can potentially knock out all the ground floor windows, but where some of them have that structure in place and it's more open and closed. Some spaces are more appropriate for particular uses. And so therefore just thinking about how those work together, the user and the type of space, and whether a digital program can be created to accommodate that. But I think the key point for me really is in the creation of that process of existing building, and it's that engagement to create that.
Brilliant.
You.
Will, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jaffer. I love this idea. I think it's great. And, building on what Sue was saying earlier about us having to embrace a kind of European stance on congregation, these covered spaces are going to become, come into their own. I've just written down the word, the great indoors, that idea of this sort of blurred line between indoor and outdoor. And I think there's too many thresholds across the city where there's a sort of lobby buzzer culture where you do get to go and look at the art, but ultimately it's quite exclusive. You have to kind of go run the gauntlet of whether you're worthy enough by the security or the man in the yellow. And so I think, this is a really good idea. I think there's a conflict we've seen on the South Bank between the commerciality and the community, and how, owners see the value in what you're presenting is something we need to look at, the management, the maintenance. We've got challenges with a 24-hour city. It's a perfect place for people to sleep as well. So, how do we manage that? We've got a huge problem with that in all the cities, across the world. But I think, looking at what Tara was saying, why don't we identify, we walk past all these timber chevrons that where a commercial outlet's going to be at the bottom of a block of flats, and they're empty. So can't we just look at programming those as kind of urban rooms or programmatic spaces until the Tesco's, Co-op, whatever, wants to go in there and become that tenant below the lovely flats that we're all seeing go up everywhere. There's a wealth of spaces. The Westway Trust proves that. The Archco with Network Rail are looking at all these different occupations. I think as much as I'd love to see every new build have a lifted floor, we can also start to identify, as these guys have been saying, existing opportunities across the city.
Great. Jaffer, do you want to come back just before we switch to our next speaker?
Yeah. On the thing about ground floors that are sort of enclosed, as Sue is pointing to, I think one day far in the future we'll be in a place where we feel comfortable going into those spaces, but I always sort of walk past the place and think, am I actually allowed to be there? Can I not be in there? Which is why I guess for this idea, I sort of proposed not having those enclosing walls. But I hope we get there one day. I really hope we do. I hope it becomes normal. The thing about privately owned public space and pops, and there's been a whole, I guess, raft of news stories about that in the last couple of years. I'm afraid that the whole thing about you talking about community and who owns spaces, the thing about South Bank, I'm afraid that all just comes down to ideology and policy. I think is my I don't think those are design solutions. I don't think anyone can design these buildings so that they don't have those contradictions. It is a question of policy and ideology. Do you believe in public ownership? Do you believe in private ownership? Do you believe in free market completely versus not? I think that's where this battle will be fought when won or lost. The thing about valuing things that I think is quite interesting. So when we say, yes, there's a commercial incentive for South Bank to give up that space and commercialize it, so to speak. Well, actually, New Council, I think, in a month or so ago, they've taken on social things like well-being and happiness as their indicators for coming out of COVID recovery, so for having COVID recovery, rather than necessarily a pound sign. And perhaps there's something in there where if we change how we measure the outputs of these spaces, well, then something like my idea or like the skate space will suddenly be really attractive because you can show that it has all these benefits. It's just not necessarily a direct monetary benefit, but it'll have so many other benefits, like, I don't know, cutting down the cost of the NHS because people are getting out more, things like that. Yeah, big fan of advancing community value, which ties into what Tara was saying about having a program plan and what Will was saying as well. Yeah, why not walk around the city and identify these spaces? We've built a lot of our cities already. A lot's being built where you could do this stills thing, but I'm not advocating tearing buildings down and re-putting them up, because the greenest building is the building that's not built, so to speak, right? So we don't want to be tearing things down. We've got to control our carbon. So absolutely, let's walk around the city and figure out where this could happen, and then as buildings come up for refurbishment every 15, 20 years, whatever it is, then we can look into carefully designing it so that you can create more of this ground floor public space.
Brilliant. Jaffer, I'm going to leave it there because we've got to get to our next speaker. But thanks so much. I thought that was great. And thank you so much for our sounding panel. I'm going to do my magic elimination. So everybody give a wave. And I'm going to slowly vanish. And I'm going to invite Rosanna up, who's our final speaker for today. So hopefully Rosanna will be joining me in a moment. Hello.
Hello. Hey, here we go. Here's the video.
Hi, great to see you. Are you all set?
I think I am. If you're ready.
I'm going to vanish as if by magic, and you should share your screen.
Okay, sounds good. Ready, guys? Yes. Here we go. It may be chaotic, it's fun, it's frivolous, but just don't take Carnival lightly. Carnival persists around the world as a model for society to reimagine its reality year on year, and it's parallels among the familiar. It takes place in the very city streets we inhabit and creates a parallel world in our everyday public spaces. So is the Carnivalist philosopher...
Rosanna, wait.
Carnival.
We can't hear you over the music.
Stop. You can't hear me.
We love the music, but we can't hear you at all. We just hear your little, just a tiny voice, but then we hear the music great. So
do this. That's fine. That's fine. What I'll do is I'm glad you guys had a little music in the morning. I mean, it was meant to make you up, so I hope that happened. What I will do is I had tested this before, so apologies. We'll play this. Let's see if this works.
Okay, I'm going to vanish. I'm going to leave you to it. Or I'll wait until.
There we go.
You're good. You're good. Go for it.
All right. So as the Carnivalist philosopher Mikhail Bakhtin says, Carnival's the world standing on its head. So if the world is now turned upside down, could Carnival become a radical solution to reimagine our public realm? Now, I'm Rosanna Vitiello, and I'm an urban researcher. I focus on the cultural significance of public space. And I was in Rio in February to learn about Carnival before COVID happened and experience how this act of creativity transforms mundane city streets into places that are collectively celebrated. Now, I think that that's just what our public spaces need right now. So in raising the value and awareness of the public realm, I propose that the tools of Carnival could be used as a design methodology to help us not only reimagine, but prototype our public spaces and our cities of the future. So before we get into the pragmatic, let's look at a little bit of the philosophy of Carnival. You know, Carnival is a universal celebration. It takes to the streets as Mardi Gras in New Orleans, as Mass in the Caribbean, as Carnival in Brazil, as Notting Hill Carnival, Fasching in Germany, or Mardi Gras in Australia. Carnival is really about subversion and engagement. And that level of engagement draws people. If you look at the figures behind it, Rio Carnival draws $1 billion a year in revenue. Notting Hill has a return on investment for 1 on 9. So if you're thinking from a developer mindset, Carnival's good business as well as great engagement. But most importantly, what every Carnival has in common is a spirit of counterculture. It's described as an act of creative defiance, an act of protest, but with a positive outcome. And so in Brazil, as an example, for those that are marginalized or downtrodden or don't get to have their voices heard, it really shifts power dynamics. So you might see, for instance, a favela dweller becoming a samba queen. But the point is that those protests and those fantastic futures are lived out in public for all to see. Now, right now, I think we need more voices in designing our public spaces. And Carnival takes that act of protest and turns it to celebrations, but it does it in a positive way. And the most important aspect of it is that you should feel it. It's visceral. Carnival helps us not only to reimagine new ways of being in the city, but to actively feel them out too. So if we think about a classic, community engagement exhibition, this goes way beyond like pale renders where we can barely make out our future. It helps us to experience how a space can be transformed. And I think if we ran our community engagement with a Carnival flavor, we'd probably get a hell of a lot more public involved. So let's look at some of the other aspects of it, the practical aspects. Let's go behind the scenes. In encouraging a kind of more equitable, more imaginative, more collaborative and collective design process that totally overturns traditional models of planning, we can learn from Carnival's constructs. So like good places, Carnival is made in layers and it draws together so much collective expertise. We're going to break down the process in a minute and go behind the scenes. But first, to give you some sense of this, in Rio as an example, this is a city of samba. To give each samba school, and there are 14 of them, represents a different part of the city. Now imagine that in London, that each part of the city has its own way of dreaming up its future and building that. We have some equivalents here, like the Carnival Arts Centre in Luton, but I think we could go further. So let's break down this layer, these layers of Carnival. The first is provocation, narrative. The second are the props. Those are the physical structures. The third are the people, the residents, the dancers, in essence, the participants. And the fourth is the pace, which is movement, music, and rhythm. And if we look at them one by one, we can start to make parallels to design and planning. First, the provocation. This is a provocative image, and Carnival always starts with a provocative narrative. I think an important aspect of this is, what's the story, what's happening now that we're not happy with, and what's the story we want to tell about the future of our place and community. Now, Carnival reveals real urban stories that go otherwise unheard. This is a União da Ilha. This is in a Carnival procession, the samba drum in front of millions of people, and it highlights what life is like in a favela. Now, in a similar way, how do we want to highlight the unheard stories, and how do we build them towards a positive future outcome? Because that's the aspect of Carnival that's really important. It takes unheard stories and it turns them into something that has a much more progressive future. So in the way that speculative design plays out different future scenarios, so does Carnival. Now, in the real world, I often say that urban design needs a huge leap of imagination because you're working in timeframes of 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So if we're dreaming up future places, we need to carry everyone along with that story. And, for a developer, that's how you sell housing off plan. You're trying to get someone to imagine the future. For a local authority, that's how you gather community support. And the first step is establishing a coherent storyline for a place that keeps us all moving in sync. So Carnival can help us define our collective challenge, but also our collective dream. Now, the second layer here are the props. How do we bring this story to life? Well, this is almost the easiest thing, I think, for any landscape architect or architect to imagine. It might be a structure, a street furniture, a physical object, but the point is that a prop
is a construct, right, to help us use our imagination and fill in the gaps on a place. In the way that theatre works, it demands more of the audience. It engages us more in that respect. And in Carnival, these props, interestingly, are made almost entirely from recycled materials. So there's actually an exercise in sustainability here to work with. Now, in the real world, this is about place prototyping. It's a kind of a take on tactical urbanism, but perhaps with the benefit that some of these things could move or be moved. So that, again, there's a greater level of engagement. It's much more participatory, much more kinetic, much more active as a way to design, I think, in a real space and can be applied in a real space. The third aspect is the people. Our cities for everyone, we know that, and public spaces especially. And designers are starting to realize how we really need to learn to empathize with others and put ourselves in other people's shoes. Now, Carnival embraces the act of role play, right? As we were saying, it subverts hierarchies. This kid at the front is leading the band. If we can use that tool through costume and through character development, we can bring in some of the most interesting kind of aspects of personal empowerment for those who are involved as participants, but also for us as designers to imagine someone else's reality. Carnival's also a collaborative act. And so this aspect of capacity building and us saying, hey, we as built environment professionals don't have all the answers on cities, I think is really important. So in the real world, we at times, work with personas. We've done that plenty of times in the past to help us imagine the intricacies of everyday life, or hands-on kind of community planning where we're sketching out in front of a group of people. But if we can go one further and get people to almost step into character for a place and act that out, and I don't think it's just for the extroverts, I think will really help to build empathy into the design process. And then the fourth aspect is pace. So this is music, movement, performance. We're really bad at designing with time and pace, I think, in the built environment. We need to think about the lived environment. And that's the benefit of Carnival. It helps us to consider the choreography of a space, its rhythms, its flows, and its intensity. Now think about it. Music creates atmosphere, emotion. You close your eyes and imagine the atmosphere of the place. And if we change the soundtrack, we totally change the intention of a space and the way that people behave in it. You also have the lyrics, which are part of the songs, and that really sticks with people. If you want to get a message out about a place, you could do worse than to write a song about it. We then have, of course, the procession, the aspect of movement. Now, procession, think about it, is literally moving in unison together towards a future. And I think this is a really interesting aspect also in almost immediate placemaking. If you have a group of people walking together versus a group of people in a circle, you don't need any structure. You've literally, defined a place almost immediately. It's the most rapid form of prototyping you can really have. So in the real world, well, I think sound is really underrated as a design tool for places. I know I've used it in the past to help people imagine either what has disappeared or what might appear in a place. And so think of music instead of potentially place branding. Spend the money you're going to put into your marketing campaigns on commissioning a song, and you'll probably make your money back. Think of it also as a way to draw an engagement. Sound carries. So it's almost more powerful than a hoarding or a kind of a board that invites people in to become part of a community planning weekend. So, during this time of COVID, if we bring together we bring together these layers. I think the reality is right now we can only meet as 6 people. So you can't have a 6-person carnival. But what we can do is we can test out each of these elements and we can use each of them, sound or movement or character or narrative, as design tools for public space to be able then to bring them together once we're able to congregate once again. And I think an important factor is to say, well, why us? Like, why should we be involved in it? And I want to highlight this is a radical idea, but it's not a crazy idea. There is precedent. I run Design Like a Storyteller workshops for urban designers that gets them to think in character. Ash Sakula have been talking about Carnival as a regeneration tool for some time. And I've been talking to some of my colleagues like Stephanie Edwards at Urban Symbiotics about how Carnival could be work as an engagement tool. I also think there's a reason that now it's an important factor. This was in Southampton, interestingly, a celebration of people dancing together 2 meters apart. Like, we need people to gather in a safe way, and that safe way is outside, as we've highlighted. So if planners are starting to loosen up their permits in terms of what can happen for cycling or for moving around the city in different ways, why not safe forms of Carnival? And finally, why here? Well, like, the UK is a multicultural nation, and I think Carnival is a blend of so many different influences mixing together. It can help us bring new voices into the mix. people who are great at engaging people in the city, which isn't always built environment professionals. So learn from others, as Will was saying, let's move out of those silos. If public space is about celebrating the everyday, then I think we can learn from Carnival to make much more fun, celebratory places. And I'll leave you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So if you want to unshare your screen, I'm going to bring on your feedback panel. I want to mention Natascha McIntyre-Hall is actually here and ready to feedback, but her IT team has let her down. She can't get on the system today. So I'm sure she's going to feedback directly to you. We'll find a way to make sure she gets her comments to it. But in the meantime, I'm going to invite on. So thank you so much for that. And I did get woken up by the music, so it was brilliant. So I'm going to invite back Adam. And I'm going to invite, hopefully he will appear as if by magic. And I'm going to bring back Will. There we go. And Jonny. Jonny's vanished. So if you guys want to, I'll find out where Jonny is. But in the meantime, if you want to kick us off, Will.
So yeah, just to play devil's advocate, I guess the city of Samba and the British Reserve are perhaps at two polar opposites. I think we spend most of our time saying sorry as we bumped into people with our, there are those that go to Carnival. So I just think it would be interesting to understand, how those of us who maybe are a little bit more reserved in our character or the European culture embody that sort of energy and place. But from a creative perspective, I love this idea. And I think, the comparatives you've been saying about this leap of imagination from living in your little box in your development site, you could have this life, and the Carnival gives that much more elevated, it's sort of putting the common man at the front or woman. And sort of really bringing out those unheard stories. And I think that's something that even the best kind of engagement people still don't do, because there's still that lack of, why me? Why do I need to do it? I've got to go to my job. I've got to do this. I've got to feed the family. I'm not going to come and talk about you doing a nice park around the corner. So I think this almost puts it front and center, and you can't really escape Carnival, except unless you're going to go to the Cotswolds, like most of the people in Notting Hill. But yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and I think I'd like to explore a 6-person Carnival as much as anything else. But yeah,
lots of little ones.
But yeah, thank you. See what everyone else says.
Brilliant. Jonny, do you want to come in on this one?
Yes. Thank you. That was just really, really such a rich presentation, and so thought-provoking. It sort of got me thinking about whether we have a tradition of Carnival, or the degree to which we have one. And I think that it does tap into something quite interesting that we're seeing at the moment, where we're sort of temporarily looking at our streets in a different way. Just little things like school streets, or Extinction Rebellion street closures, or the kind of Jubilee street parties and all those sorts of things, where just for kind of temporary periods, streets are closed and allowed to be something different. And I know they're not carnivals, but I think that idea that a street isn't for one fixed purpose. Nobody has exclusive right to a street. It actually has to be something that's evolving and needs to be challenged from time to time, is something that we're starting to see. And actually, probably the Extinction Rebellion protests, where town centres are closed down, have something of what you were talking about. And they've been, just as a kind of consumer kind of proposition, they've actually been tremendously exciting and interesting for people, partly for the reasons that you say. They've just instantly transformed people's perceptions of a place. So I totally can relate to all of that. I also think that the Carnival thing, you've made the point really well, that it goes a little bit further than all those things, because it's active in its subversiveness. It in its spatially it's subversive, which is the points that I've sort of really related to so far, but also, as you say, the kind of the power dynamics and social dynamics are also subverted through it. So I guess all of that leads me to a kind of a set of questions really around the degree, like how would this be deployed in practice? Who is the, what stage in what process? If it's kind of in the context of a development or a place that's changing, then yes, that's great, because it's like they're kind of coming together to celebrate change rather than fearing change, I think is really resonant. But who is the convener of the carnival? Who is curating it? Where does the power dynamics lie? And how do you maintain that kind of subversiveness if it's in the hand of somebody who's got different motives in bringing the thing together? And developers often like to maintain control of processes and fear being out of control, whereas a whole carnival is being out of control. That's the wonderful thing about it. So how do you square that circle?
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm going to move to you, Adam. I saw you nodding your head on who's running the carnival. So do you want to come in?
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that. I agree that I understand carnival as coming from people in a place and their culture. So it's it comes from the people in the place. So are we talking about appropriation of people and place for planning engagement, or how are we going to make sure that actually it is creating this opportunity for assembly of publics around issues of concern, and a way which we see more of when we understand sort of Extinction Rebellion's actions. That is an issue of concern, assembles a public, embodies an experience in a place. So that's coming from the issue of concern. And so, and it comes from the people that are concerned about that. So I guess to echo what Jonny's saying, it's like, how do we, is it for us too? Or how do you assemble? We don't form publics, but we could help assemble them. The issues form the public, people form publics for themselves, but there is opportunity to assemble. Having said that, though, I love the way you break down these sort of methodologies of carnival, if you like, or the elements of carnival, and I absolutely see the potential for that. And if we can't dance, we won't go to the revolution. So if the revolution is a revolution in planning process and participatory planning process, then to be able to dance the revolution, I think is a great idea. Finally, just to back up your arguments, if any were needed, about how this isn't sort of fanciful or sort of marginal in any way. There's already the discussions around serious play, where playful inquiry leads to seriously useful insights and learning, because there's a safe space for experimentation, affect, experiential understanding of things. And I think this is absolutely in that space. And also, Thomas Binder in his talk around sort of service role plays as being rehearsals of possible futures. I think you're absolutely, that it's in the same space as that. And even Case Dorst's thinking around how we reframe challenges to find new ways of addressing them. So reframing the challenge of less than inclusive or less than engaging participatory planning processes by reframing the participatory planning process as a carnival. I think all of these, all supports your vision. So thanks for that. But I would I'd echo Jonny's point really as the question, which is who runs these carnivalesque activities important, and how do you avoid cultural appropriation? Are we looking at a planning wrap? Let's hope not.
Rosanna, I'm going to give you just 2 minutes to come back on that before we wrap for today. But
no, I think that's an essential point actually, to Jonny and Adam, and I think as you said, in Brazil, like basically it's come from the people, so to speak, who actually are some of the most disadvantaged people in the city, and yet they're creating the greatest show on earth and creating a hell of a lot of revenue out of it. So I think in that respect, it would be interesting to look at, for instance, what the councils have set up. If you're looking at that in a slightly more as neutral as possible sort of way, or look at local neighbourhood groups and finding ways, I think, to sort of work with them, because I think it has to be something that then connects what's happening on the ground to a bigger structure. That's sort of number one. But I think that aspect of ownership is important. If a developer runs it, I don't think it's going to quite work. To Will's point about British Reserve, I actually think that's about an aspect of role play. Like fashion in Germany, I would argue that maybe, we're as reserved as the Germans. And the last scene was in Cambridge, which is probably one of the most traditional, cities we have here in the UK. I think, as Adam pointed out, when there is music and you're taking people through a process, you get them kind of out of their shell, they suddenly can open up their thinking. So it's about taking people through the process rather than just dropping them in it, I think. But thank you all for your comments. I think great ideas and support there to try and take something further.
Okay, great. All right, everybody give a wave. I'm going to just wrap up for today, but I wanted to thank huge thank you to our sounding panel and to our idea presenters. I mean, that was just an amazing feast. We're going to be back here again next week. So I hope you'll join us then. And also, I mean, a lot of these people, special thank you to Natascha, who couldn't join us on the stage as well. Natascha speaking at the festival, Sue speaking at the festival, Jonny speaking at the festival. So do come to the festival. We're going to continue doing these free events through to the festival, but please, if you can, buy a ticket to the festival. It helps support our free events as well. So great. I'm going to leave the lounge open. Hopefully you guys can go. Oh, applause. I love it. New platform.